This is a video for how to go about creating a fully dimensioned drawing of number 13 in your 20 ISOs. So we're going to double click on number 13 and we will go to design and we'll go to drawing from design, PLTW title block, say OK. And once this loads, once again, we're going to go to a front view and we are going to change our scale at 1 to 3. So we're going to go ahead and place our front view and we're going to go to OK, and I'm going to go to projected view. I'm going to project the top and the side, create the ISO, right click and say OK, double click on our ISO, make it shaded and say close. Now one thing we're going to need to do in our drawing here is we're going to have to start out by placing center marks and center lines. So we're going to come up to our center mark icon and we want to place those inside of our holes, and we also want to place them inside of this arc. Now we can also place them for a center mark up here as well, and you'll notice it'll give us those center points right there. It kind of tells us where the center of that fillet is that we did in a previous video in making the part. We need to go up to center line bisector. We need to place for ourselves a center line between here and here, because we know we have holes up here at the top. We have to show where the center line is. Now you could get into an interesting question that since this is an arc over here, should we place a center line up here between here and here? And I'm going to say yes. Since this surface right here is, let's say, kind of a half pike for a skateboarder, if you will, like in this area it's a half circle, I would put a center line up here. We're going to right click and we're going to say OK. What we'll do is we're going to go in and do our hole dimensions and our radial dimensions first. So we will come up and click on dimension, and we're going to go ahead and do the outside radius of this arc first, and that is a radius of 2. Remember, if it's an arc or let's say a half circle or a fillet, it'll give you a radius dimension. If it's a hole, it'll give you a diameter dimension. Come back up to dimension again, and we're going to click on our inside fillet right here, our inside half circle, and we're going to go ahead and click on that, and that'll give us a radius of 1. I'm going to right click and say OK. I did miss placing a center line in our side view, didn't I? Oops. So I'm going to go to center line. Need to put a center line in between these two. Got to thinking too fast a little bit, and sometimes you miss stuff when you make a video or when you just start dimensioning stuff. As we go through here, we're going to notice that these holes are the same size. So if I go to dimension, I just rest it here. That's a diameter of 2. That's a diameter of 2. We're just going to do a times 2 for this, but let's click on the outside edge and place it. I'm going to right click and say OK. Then I'm going to double click on that number, and you're going to notice that it's going to highlight. You're going to see the flashing cursor next to it. And I'm going to go times 2. But while we're here, just want you to notice it's going to open up this different dialog box over here on the side, and we can go in and place tolerances. We can do all different kinds of things. You can place even different symbols as time goes on. A lot of different things that you can do when you're placing a dimension. So once we get into tolerances in another video, you can put in tolerances next to it. Here's your symbols you can insert up here. If we wanted to, for the sake of discussion, we could say the depth of the hole. Here's your depth of hole symbol. You could write that in. A lot of different things you can place in. We're just going to go ahead and say close. If you're familiar with using Autodesk Inventor, at the time I am making this video, there's not a hole and thread function in dimensioning. You have to put in your notes yourself by double clicking on them. So for now we have, we have a radius dimension from the outside of here. We need to place a location dimension between these two holes. We'll come up to dimension, and let's go ahead and go between these two holes. I want to make sure I find the center point when that circle shows up. I'm going to make sure I'm getting that right. That point right there from here to here should be a solid number of 3, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that down in my top view. Now you might think, why are you making this in the top view? Because I'm trying not to drag up too high outside of a view. I think it can make it a little bit easier to see the closer that you are to the actual feature. So here in the top view, let's come up here and let's say from our, I have to go to dimension, I went to center line. From this line right here, what's the line? Let's zoom in a little bit, see if I can get something without a snap. From this point to this line is going to be 7. So we're going to go ahead and drag that over. And we can place the other feature from here to here in the top view, but for the sake of this drawing, I'm just going to go ahead and place this in the front view. That kind of gives us an idea of what the depth is of this particular ledge right here. So we know what the full width of the object is because we have 7 plus 2, so it's going to be a total of 9. Remember, if I want to move these closer, I can click on these gray squares, and move them up. So we have all of our width dimensions done. We have the location dimension of that hole. So now we need to go to our depth dimensions. But for our depth dimensions, you can notice that we're at a radius of 2, so the full depth is going to be 4. And we know the center point of these lines for each of these is right in line with the center marks of our radius on the outside, so we don't really have any different location dimensions for the depth right now. And we have our radius dimensions we need to place for these arcs over here on the side. So if I go up to dimension, and I'm going to place my radius dimension, because this is a depth dimension if you think about it, it's a radius of 1 for these little arcs, and notice this is just part of this larger circle. Now this is a different kind of arc, so I'm going to hold off on saying times 3, but I am going to double click on this and say times 2, since we do have a radial dimension that's twice, and we can tell that this is a symmetrical object from side to side by this center line right here. So we don't really need to place anything else regarding the depth dimensions because we have a center point here. We know the radius is 1, that radius is 1. So we can go 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 would be 4. So our depth dimensions are holding. We do not have to go in and place any kind of a dimension, you know, from here to here. Like this would be an example of being redundant. There's no need for that because we know that the reader of the drawing can tell that they would just have to multiply this by 2 and get 4. All right, next dimension. For our next dimension, we want to try to find the total height of the object if possible, but we're mainly going to do that through our front view. So we're going to come up to dimension, and we're going to go ahead and do this ledge right here. And we're going to also go ahead and say the top of the object. So we're going to say from here down to here. Let's just go straight down to the line, and we're just going to drag over in this case. Is going to be 7 as our total height. Now we could have placed this to the left, and you could make kind of a strong argument and say, you know, I think that this looks cleaner when we place it over here to the left, but we always want to try to maintain adjacency between views. There's no view to the left of the front view to try to line anything up with. So if I drag this over and I say, you know, this is going to be 7, gives me an idea of how high up this point would have to be, because we're going to place a location dimension right now of where that arc is located. You know, that radius of 1 arc that's right here, and we're just going to come up to our center mark that we made and drag that out. And we can tell now, like the distance from that point up to the top is 2, and we can infer that from another dimension. We have 2 down here at the bottom. We really don't need any other height dimensions to fully communicate how to create this drawing. So this right here is a fully dimensioned sketch. Now in the videos that you've watched with what my dimensioning style is between the rules, I'm keeping this 7 right here because I don't really feel any other way would be a good way of communicating it. I would have to go non-adjacent. I'd have to go like up here and go straight down to like here and try to drag that over. Like, let's just pretend this said perfectly, just for the sake of discussion, that says 7. If I drag this over, I'm going through an extension line there, and I'm going to the top of an arc. I'd prefer not to do that. So this 7 adequately communicates for us. So this has been a video for how to go about creating a fully dimensioned drawing for number 13 in your 20 ISOs. Make sure you say save early and often, and you see it show up on the left-hand side of your video.